Hi everyone!
Hi!
This is Cecile and Fanny from Petite Creme, and we're here with you today for episode 5 of our Mom Talks.
Yeah.
And today's topic is sleep.
Yeah, we just maybe gonna wish you a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year!
It's a New Year, so yeah, Happy New Year everyone. Hi everyone.
So one thing we can wish you all for 2024 is some good sleep.
Yeah.
Let's put that on our list, on our to-do list for the year. So we'll wait for a few more people to come in. Hi Salome.
I'm gonna invite to join. Yeah.
Hello everyone. Welcome. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Fantastic 2024. Yeah. There's a lot that's going to be coming this year. So I'm sure everybody watching has a lot on their plate, because if you're here, you either have a baby or you're pregnant. So 2024 is going to be filled with a lot of things for sure. And as we were saying, the one thing we wish everybody for 2024 is a good night's sleep.
Yes.
A lot of sleep for everyone, because sleep is important, right? So while we wait here for more people to join, why don't you people write down what your current struggle is with sleep, why you're here, what kind of sleeper your baby is, the pattern that they have, and what are your concerns and what you want us to talk about, because sleep is a very wide topic, very prominent, very important, yet very personal from one family to the next.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Perlman. For those who haven't met me yet, I'm a holistic health coach who is also a pediatrician. So I'm gonna sometimes pull things a little bit broader, because I found that in my practice, when we kind of pulled it broader, we started to see things a little clearer. So that's something that I think is really helpful. So I would actually, as you jot down how your baby and your kids sleep, jot down how you sleep. Jot down how your partner sleeps, how other people in the house sleep. Because a lot of times I'll hear, my kid won't sleep. And then I ask the parents, like, oh yeah, we don't go to bed until like 3 in the morning. We're on the computer, all the lights are on. And I don't know why my kid won't go to sleep. And I'm like, I would stay up. Like, that sounds like so much fun. Like, everyone's up, it's a party. Why would you go to sleep? Sometimes you have to see it from the kid's point of view, that, you're not really giving cues to the baby, that it's time to go to sleep. And your body needs those cues to kind of start to slow down. So think about how your general family, whoever's in the home, gets ready for bedtime and sleeps, because that gives you a lot of information.
Okay. So let's get a couple comments in. Maybe do we want to share our personal experience with sleep? With our own, I'm a mother of 2.
I'm a mother of 2.
And you are a mother of 2, Varisa. So I'm sure we have like at least 6 different versions of a sleeper within our own, roof. So I don't know, who wants to start between all of us?
I think I'm the lastest one who get sleep, so I'm gonna start. So from my 2 experience, that was pretty different. So my daughter is almost 5 and my son is 17 months. So my daughter, she finally get like a whole night of sleep around 8 months old. Before that, I nursed her. So before that, I had the feeling that she was not hungry at night, but she kept, waking up at night, and, by reflex, I feed her. And after 8 months, it felt like it's never gonna stop. So my husband said, okay, we're gonna stop feeding her at night. So it was a little bit struggling for, I would say, a week. Yeah. And after she just got it and take the pattern, and now she can sleep 12 hours straight. She needs her 12 hours first, because if she's under 12 hours, she doesn't function very well.
Yeah.
And for my son, it was a little bit longer. He was not hungry at night, but we still don't know what was it. Like, it just screamed to fall asleep.
Okay.
He doesn't want to fall asleep by himself. He struggles a lot. We try different things. Now he's a little bit better, but maybe because he just grew up, or we just kind of let go, you know,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
we are maybe in a better place ourselves with my husband. But now he can get also 12 hours of sleep, uninterrupted sleep, so which is good for us. But I would say it's been like only 2 months, like, so he probably slept good at 15 months. So
Yeah.
very different experience from two baby, and we tried the same thing. I know it's not the best thing, but we tried the same technique, and
Yes.
it did not respond the same as my daughter. So yeah, that's my story about sleep. And me personally, I'm not a morning person. I like to enjoy my evening, and I don't like to wake up at morning. So, and my husband is the other way. So, but we are a good sleeper overall in our house. Yeah.
And I think that your story gives a really good example of how individual sleep style is, sleep needs are, self-consoling behavior. I think that that's something that we don't always link the idea between anxiety and abilities to console yourself. So being able to get yourself to fall asleep is one of the first exercises in self-consoling behavior. And it's tricky because you have all these feeding needs in the beginning, right? So then the question is that, you know, do they need something to suck on, or are they hungry? So that line between self-consoling needs and hunger needs is really sketchy. You know, it gets
Especially
really
when you don't sleep yourself,
Yeah.
and you're kind of, the
yeah.
brain is not fully
No,
functioning,
no.
like very
Yeah.
pragmatically.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very difficult to be very logical after you've been woken up like on the hour and now it's 3:30 in the morning and your eyes haven't even really like closed yet. I mean, to be like, well, at that moment, what do you think? I mean, you're just literally like, I don't even know where I am, you know?
Yeah.
So it's really a huge demand. But I think that there are certain times within their first year when you think, you know, I don't think that they're hungry. You know, and I think that that's, you know, sometimes the first 3 months it's kind of a crapshoot. They're in the bed sometimes with you. They're hungry. They don't even know their night and day is still being worked out. But as the months go on and you actually see them, say you're breastfeeding or even on a bottle, they kind of plop on and then they just go right back to sleep. You know, they don't even eat anything.
To add to that, in my experience, what gave it away to me was the sound.
Interesting.
One day I never paid attention really to the sound of the sucking, but then one day I realized that I didn't hear that slurp sound.
Right?
And I was like, wait a minute, like, what are you doing there?
Yeah,
It's not true. Exactly. And that was the first time I actually noticed that it made a different sound when they drink than, but again, she was like maybe 3 months old, so it's a bigger suck at this point than when they're really
starting. I call them fakey feeds. You know, if you're starting to feel like, I don't think that was really a hunger one, let me see what they can do to try to kind of bring themselves down. The thing that's a little bit interesting, you know, working with psychologists, both of my kids had definitely some anxiety, you know, and have anxiety now. But one of the things when I've worked with psychologists, one of the first things they ask about is how did they sleep? And I think that there's a lot of different approaches. A lot of people in another generation were all about the cry it out, right? Have them completely don't go in the room. And it's not black and white. It's not like don't cry it out, cry it out. There's a lot of actually space in between. So I know people a lot of times when they hear cry it out, they're like, no, I will absolutely, or they're like, yes. You know, like everyone seems to be very split on that. It doesn't have to be like that. There are ways to do it so that it's a gradual process. Like you said, once you start to realize, right, that there are some feeds that you're like, that's not really a feed. Maybe in my world, between my husband and I, my partner and I, right, we will let the baby cry a little bit longer, right? Like maybe another 5 minutes, maybe another 10 minutes. And that's kind of like an in-between. Whereas sometimes the the traditional, cry it out is very like militant, where it's like, you don't even touch them, you don't even listen to them, you just get out of the room, stand at the, so life doesn't work like that. Nothing works in extreme. So somewhere in the middle is fine. But if you can figure out a way to kind of create an ability for them to self-console down and go to sleep, or be able to self-console if they wake up in the middle of the night, you actually give them this kind of like mental tool that will help them with issues with anxiety as they get older. So this is a relevant exercise. This is a relevant discussion. Besides the fact of sleep being important, right? But I think that what we're starting to understand in the larger picture of sleep is that there are so many pieces that contribute to a good night's sleep. It's the daytime, it's the falling asleep. It's like, what happens 2 or 3 hours before you go to sleep? What's the light that's in the room? Do you reach REM? Do you have sleep apnea? Do you, so now we're really starting to understand that it's not just how many hours, right? It's not that simple anymore. What time do you go to bed? Are you on your circadian rhythm? So all of these issues are things that you are encountering when at first as a baby, but you will undoubtedly encounter with yourself and with your kids over and over again, because it's relevant in many ways.
You mentioned the getting down to sleep, and there's one point that caught my attention is, you're right, the fact that we put baby down to sleep because it's their bedtime, but as adults, they're not full. They see that our pace is not slowing down, right? We're kind of, it's usually, I don't know, for me, I would put them down, and that was the time I was like, okay, I'm gonna be active because I can. So now thinking back from what you said, I was probably like saying something with my words, and my body was projecting a whole of I'm getting hype as I'm telling you to slow down, which is probably not the best messaging for
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm just sharing that because I just heard it when you said it, and I'm like, damn, like my action was not matching my words, so the kid must have been like, oh, wait a minute, mommy is just so hype, and yet I have to sleep, right?
My daughter, she's always asked me, what are you gonna do now? I'm gonna get a shower and go to bed. Like, nothing exciting.
Right? And I think I think you there's a couple of great themes that you had there. One is that like kids are not completely based on words. They also base a lot on feeling. Right? So even if you're saying like, I'm not doing anything, I'm going to bed because I'm really tired, right? They're like, no. So there is something like you're really excited for me to go to bed. You really want me to go to bed, don't you? Like they're like, no. And so it's like, you are right. Like you have to be like I'm sure that like without realizing it, you might have read that story a little faster, right? You might have been not completely present. One thing we talk about in our talks all the time is about being present. And the kids, they look in your eyes, they're about to go to sleep, but if they see your eyes are like darting around, right? They're like, right? You're not
signals on the
I'm not feeling it, right? I'm not feeling going to bed right now. And you're part of the environment. You're just as important if the light is on or if the light is off, right? Like most people would say, of course I would turn off the lights, but you are right. Like maybe you need to turn off your emotions. Like maybe you need to turn off all the things you're thinking about. Oh my God, the minute this kid goes to sleep, I have so much to do. I have to do the laundry. You got to turn that off. When you're bringing them to bed, you got to turn that off, right? Because they're going to be like, I smell something is going on. And maybe, if anything, kids have like the worst FOMO ever, they don't want to be left out of anything fun, So
do you think that start from a baby age when they're just born, or is it something because I mean when they verbalize it, then you can tell them? I remember many times using, you're not going to miss out on anything, and I remember saying that out loud even when they were babies, because sometimes I had the feeling that they were just holding on to and just being able to say out loud, okay, you can let go, you're not going to miss out. Like literally within a second they would go to sleep because it'd be like, okay, I'm not missing out.
I think that people have this whole thing of like, how do you talk to a baby? I'm like, talk to a baby like you would talk to another person, because your feeling is there. And so like by actually verbalizing it, you actually allowed yourself to like also like, hey, the fun is with you. Like you're going to sleep. There's no fun after this. Like like it's time to like kind of rest so that you can be, and even though you're like, why am I talking to this baby? This baby can't talk back to me. You know, the baby can feel your emotion as to what you're saying. So I think that, you know, I actually don't think that communication changes that much from, I do, if you ever, you know, you guys saw me with your babies, like I would talk to them and be like, hi, how are you? Are you having a good day? What's going on? I would just talk to them like normal, and they could sense my emotion because I was present and talking to them as if I was with a friend, you know, and just chatting with them. So I do think it was good for you to say that. Like that was right, you know, because they really needed to hear that it was important for them to wind themselves down. We're really, really, you know, we have a whole kind of country full of people who don't sleep well. And I really do think it impacts our overall health. And I think that between devices, which are really tough because the blue light behind the device really activates a gland called the pineal gland, and it really wakes us up. It's like taking the sun and being like, let me put the sun in front of my face and see if I start to feel sleepy. You know, that's not the way, you know, your body doesn't work well with that. There's so much content, there's so much social media, there's so much kind of stimulation that comes through a phone, unfortunately, that really just revs up your mind. You know, the idea is that it was interesting because I actually just this morning had this, somebody was talking about, you know how you like wake up at 3 a.m. with like a thought. And I don't know if kids have to do with that, but like maybe like adults do too. You know, I mean, maybe it's the same idea, but they were talking about how those 3 a.m. thoughts, or maybe even nightmares that may come up with kids, are basically like unresolved thoughts from the daytime. Just things that you just left tangled and you thought, let me just go to bed and let me see. They come up, you know, your subconscious kind of like, hey, brings them up, back up and say, hey, let's think about this. If they eat a lot, like if they have a lot of protein in their belly, and like you literally, some people are like, oh, well, we have dinner at 6:30 and then we go to bed at 7. And it's like, you know, the baby's belly, the person, I can't do that. Like I need 1 or 2 hours to really digest my food. If you don't digest your food well, you know, they talk about the gut-brain superhighway. Yeah. You know, as your body's trying to digest all that food, here you are getting kind of nightmares, restless sleep, you know, undigested food is basically like signaling a lot of strange stuff to your brain. So that's where, you know, just the setup, you know, it's funny because people talk to me about sleep all the time. And it was the kind of thing where I was like, okay, let's go back to 3 p.m. And they're like, why are we talking about 3 p.m.? And I'm like, just tell me what's happening at 3 p.m., you know, because I found that we had to see, like, what time does everyone come home? What time do you guys eat dinner? What time is bath time? You know, like who's home? Who's not coming home? You know, I had a dad who was a chef and didn't come home until 1 a.m. So lo and behold, he's ready to go to bed. It's 2 p.m. The baby's been asleep since 8 o'clock and would wake up bright-eyed, bushy-tailed at like 4 a.m. And that's like, why is this kid up? I just went to sleep. And he would bring the baby to the kitchen. He would cook a meal for the kid and then put them back to sleep. And then all of a sudden he had a job where he was able to come home and go to sleep at 8 o'clock, you know, 10 o'clock with everybody. And he's like, this kid's still waking up at 4 a.m. And I'm like, are you still cooking the meal? Like, I remember, I'm like, Dad, are you still cooking the meal? Like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe she's hungry. And I'm like, I would wake up. Like, I would make an alarm clock and be like, I get a home cooked, chef quality meal at 4 a.m. I'm getting up. You know, so it's like yeah. Your response to them waking up is a whole thing. If you kind of, I have sometimes families with like 10 kids in there, and that kid gets taken out of the room. They play with the parent for a little while, and then they go back. They're like, why does this kid wake up? This kid wakes up because it's alone time. And they get positive
dedicated time. Yeah. It's hard to see that when you are in it. Yeah. Like it's very difficult when you are sleep deprived, when you're just like in the dark at 3 a.m. You have your own system going on, and it's just very hard at this point to do something rational.
Totally. Take a step back and have like a rational vision of the situation.
Yeah, it's a really, you have to be present in your thinking at every moment. I think that that's the only thing that you can ask. You won't know all the answers until you're in that moment. But if you're thinking, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I have to go, they can feel that they've got you, you know, that you're so anxious to do anything that they want for them to like go back to sleep. But in many ways, the energy has to be like, we're present. I'm here with you now. You're going to bed, right? Like, we're going to bed. And you woke up in the middle of the night, go pee if you want to, then you're going to bed. Because you can be the stimulus.
Yeah.
You know, you could be the energy that wakes them up, makes them feel like they want to be up. And that's the tricky part. So it requires a deep breath. A deep breath, even though you're so angry and tired, you need to have a deep breath to kind of write that. I think the other thing that we talk a lot about are naps during the day. Naps are something that can disrupt, because during the daytime, if you let them nap more than 2 hours, they do REM. And REM sleep is only allotted, there's a certain amount allotted for the entire 24 hours. So if you let them sleep 3.5 hours during the day, they took some of the REM that would be for night.
Okay.
So you got to be a little bit careful not to let that drift. As they
But
get
that
older,
not during
you'll see
the day is so good for parents.
Yeah. Right?
We have to admit, we love that nap during the day.
Right?
Stretches for hours because we're like, oh, that's time for myself.
Right?
So,
And you know, I'll tell parents, I'm like, you're going to have to wake them up at that 2 hour mark. And they're like, but I'm just getting my work done. And it's like, I get it. I understand it. But it doesn't work like that. Like, you have to be able to regulate so that the night and day don't switch off.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes, you know, especially when they're newborn, obviously I'll say, wake them up, feed them, and they go back to sleep. But you'll see as the first year, second year, now third, you know, 3 years old, 4 years old gets kind of weird with school. They don't really always nap as much. And sometimes I have the problem where, in fact, the kid maybe stopped napping at 2 years old, and then they go to sleep beautifully at 6:30. But when they're in school, they nap because the whole school's napping, right? And now they won't go to sleep until 9, right? Like, I've had that happen a lot.
and
So
that's
I'll ask
also
them,
one of the things that I know I wasn't very aware of when I became a mom, is that it's not a straight line. So you go through, like, do they sleep through the night when they are babies, and you're like, whatever, it's like 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 months, and then at some point they go through the night for like a week straight, and you're like, yeah, go,
I'm amazing. Yeah.
let's go to the next topic. And then a month, 2 months, a year down the road, everything got messed up. And then that's when, to me, it was even harder, because I felt like we were out of the woods.
Yeah.
And we were like, yeah, we're done with that. You know, we rocked it.
Yeah.
And sure enough, something came up, whether it was teething or it was just this change environment, the change of daycare, the whatever. And that was harder for me to face because I wasn't prepared for it.
Yes. And I mean, literally, like, I'll be honest with you, the phrase should be like, you have to be prepared to be unprepared all the time. Like, literally with my kids, like, the minute that I felt like, wow, I got this, I'm doing it, it was literally like to the day, like around the corner, something else would come in and like smash it, you know? And I was like, oh, that was really fun for a couple hours. Like, I felt fantastic. I felt so good for like 2 hours. And then now, so I'm always like a little scared when things are going well. I'm like, okay, what's coming? Like, am I feeling like, and that's the thing with sleep, is that like, it is an ongoing, you know, project. You know, it's something that, like, even as adults, I feel like I'll like hit bumps every now and then. That, like, I did something. When I moved to New York, for some reason I was drinking more coffee, but decaf coffee, I thought it would be fine. And I didn't sleep. And it took me about a month before I was like, wait a second, the decaf is just not, I'm not, like, you know, and then I was able to sleep. But like, you have to understand that it's something that's a bit of an evolving project, because you change. You're changing too. And I mean, the thing too, Fanny, that, which, you know, again, you know, I always tell you, right? You cannot cheat, right? Just the method you use with the first one, you might as well scrap it for the second one. Like, you should just assume that it's just not gonna work. Like, literally, it's off your toolbox. It's gone, you know, because my kids literally would over and over again, one way, the opposite way, one way, the opposite way. I never could duplicate whatever I did with the first one. And that still rings true, because they're just totally different people. And you're different too. You know, the number 2 kid, you would think that you would be like, oh, I'm so good, right? Like, you know, I know I have tools, I'm so good. You're actually even more exhausted.
Yeah.
So your ability to be like clear and decisive in the middle of the night, not so good, right?
No, that's so good.
Plus, you don't look at things with a fresh eye like you do with the first. The first, you're a little like lost, but at least you look at every possible avenue.
Yes.
For the second one, you tend to go for shortcuts because, like, oh, I've done that before, and then you're not as mindful for the other options, right? So you may stay longer in a wrong direction because you're just convinced that it worked before, so it has to be the recipe.
Yeah.
Right? You have to look at the second one with like fresh eyes. I think that's a very good way to do it. Like fresh eyes, like it's your first one. Like I'll have people that they're like, you know, this is my second one, but I kind of forgot everything I did for the first one. I'm like, that's fantastic. Great. Like that. This is going to be a lot better then, you know, because if you come to it being like, well, I did this, and then when it doesn't work, you get very defeated. You're like, oh my God, nothing will work. And it's like, no, just your first one is very different from the second one. So you just got to think of something different. And that's the whole, to me, all of these like first year lessons, they set up the platform of how you should kind of approach everything else. Like, you know, all the years, it sets out certain principles of being present, of being, you know, to honoring like each person separately and uniquely. Because, you know, there's
it's hard on babies, because sometimes you see a baby as just I mean, first they were like inside you, then they're outside of you, and they don't interact or whatever. So being able to see them as an individual is hard. I know it was hard for me. I don't know how it was for you, but I had a hard time seeing them as a being, you know, besides just being something that came out of me.
When they're 20, try it when they're 20. You think that's hard? I have spent, like, you know, my kids are this age where I'm like, it's their life, like it's their decisions. It's been very and yet you hear me, the reason why I like talking to you guys about these things is because it reminds me to do that with my grown kids, you know, and to say like, hey, listen, I have to remember what I learned in that first year, right? What I learned in that first year is that you're both very different, you're both beautifully unique, and I have to kind of like give you your space. You know, this is actually a great challenge to give them their space. Because one of the things when we say, you don't hear me saying how to console them back down to sleep. I'm saying how to teach them to self-console.
And there is something in the French culture, because everybody who's here knows that we're French, or they may have figured out for people who don't know us, some, you know, in a weird way. So in the French culture, we have something called a doudou, D-O-U-D-O-U.
Okay.
And that's a sleeping blanket or some kind of a teddy bear that, okay, in theory, the kid pick.
Okay.
Full disclosure for my kids, I picked it for them because I didn't want to end up with a giant piece.
You know me, I tried to pick the one for them. They never wanted what I picked. They just picked their blanket, like their sleeping sack.
Yes.
So it's a one item that you put with your baby, like at a moment of like going to sleep. So it has their scent, your scent, whatever. So you're right. You're the sleeping blanket. For me, it's like a little like teddy bear head with a little blanket attached to it. Right. And it's the thing that's always with them when they go to sleep. Right. And attaching that, and it's a being, like we talk about doudou as being, you know, its own entity. So you go to bed with doudou, and then you do that with doudou, and then you carry it around, and it's become the one thing that parents really respect as being part of the kids' world, right? It's not any random one. They have a lot of other teddy bears or stuff to be with, but this one really has a place in the kid. And every kid in France has a doudou, and it's something that you buy multiple so that you make sure you never run out if they use it or whatever. But I found that with my kid, it kind of helped as a way to get them into some kind of an hypnosis mode, because if they were used to having this little like comfort animal or thing with them, I could take her to like a a concert outside, outdoor, as long as this thing would come out, she'd be like, oh, sleeping time. And then she would sleep just because she's conditioned to that little like sleeping thing. And we were surprised when we got to the US that it's not a concept that is as strong. But in French culture, you have tons of books about like this little character and his doo-doo. This little character lost his doo-doo. Like it's really part of every kid, and it's the same word for every kid. And it's very something that is accepted and part of the culture and the kid's life.
And it's not only for sleeping, it's like the transition between parents, mom, and the kids. Like they attach the emotion of the transition with this object.
Yes.
So when you let them on the daycare or their nanny, they always have this kind of object, and that help them to transition.
Yes.
So in many ways, like it's
I think that that's something that, gosh, you know, I think that that's something that we sometimes lack in just a broad generalization in U.S. culture, is that you know, it's interesting. I mean, it's a little colored because being Asian American, I also come from that culture as well. I love the fact that I feel like so much of the child, like the recovery, even for the mother, and like the raising of children in France and perhaps in Europe, but I just know French more, is this idea of gradually in small steps building independence in the children. And I think that we are really finding, and maybe we're just like on the end, or like just recovering from a whole generation of a lot of helicopter parenting, where like the thinking is you can't do anything, I'm gonna, and I think short game, because when you think like that, yeah, maybe you do it for your kid and your kid has a moment of success, but the ends don't justify the means. The means, you know, of a person struggling, even at a very young age, and figuring out a way on their own, right, to self-console, right, to achieve something, build these little morsels of confidence. And as they get older, those little morsels of confidence, they add up. So when they aren't in your nest, right, they're not in your home, they have a whole kind of reserve and a diverse set of tools that allow them to have the confidence that they can do what they need to do without you. And
they will eventually need that, right?
Yeah.
they will. For sure.
Pretty soon, right? I mean, like, even when you drop them off, you know, to somewhere where you're not there, I mean, it's clear as day. Like there are so many moments that we're supposed to be feeding those little morsels of confidence. And yet a lot of our culture, with a lot of the helicopter parenting, is that I don't need my kid to struggle. I don't really want them to suffer at all, right? If they're on the monkey bars, I'm going to hold their legs so that they never fall, right? They never, but in the end of the day, if they go out there one day and you're not holding their legs and they think that you're there, because what do they know the difference? They've never felt your hands out there. They swing on those monkey bars and they let go, but you always caught them and you're not there, they break a leg. You know what I mean? Something breaks, right? So the idea is, how do you teach them to maybe fall a little bit? It doesn't have to break a leg every time, but just fall a little bit. And, you know, yes, like you said, you were saying, like, you know, your kids screamed, like going to sleep. It became like this thing, but the screaming kind of got a little less each time. But it was hard. I mean, I sometimes tell people, like, you know, I mean, even with my husband, like, we were trying to do it for a while. He would literally put a pillow over my head, you know, and push me down and be like, don't listen, because I was like, oh my God, the baby's crying. Like, and it's really hard. I mean, they claim that, like, the estrogen in a woman, like, it makes it very difficult for them to hear a baby crying, you know?
Yeah.
So it's physiologically very difficult, but I think we're seeing
I don't know if we lost you for a second, but it's just us.
Cannot hear you anymore.
Cannot hear you. Oh yeah, you're back.
Go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
I said we couldn't hear you for a second.
Oh yeah. So I mean, I think that, you know, I love, you know, there is obviously like the pragmatic, like how do you get your kid to sleep now? And I think that it's always important to kind of step back, see the forest for the trees, is that these are important exercises because I need your kids to be able to self-console themselves through life.
Yeah.
And really, when you really, like, as I'm standing at this space right now, like, this is the time where like my input is there, like, but it's not there. Like, this is now like whatever bank of confidence morsels I have put in, you know, and I mean, I'm still trying to do it, but like when they were younger, like, you know, and we all don't do everything perfect. There's no question, right? But I think that trying to be more present, trying to kind of like put away, you know, put aside like all of your like, oh my God, I have all these things to do. Like, kids can feel that tension. And when you can kind of say, you know, I'm going to kind of step back and see what we're doing right, what we're doing not so good. You know, if a kid, that's why traveling is so difficult, because you're trying to kind of like teach them to self-console in their environment, but yet they're in a different room, you know, every other day. I mean, that's really difficult. I think it's brilliant for the French to be like, okay, actually, like, you've chosen this doo-doo. Like, this doo-doo is with you. Like, this doo-doo is your thing. Like, and you get to kind of create the way that when you see doo-doo, like, you start to feel sleepy, right? Yeah. So it's creating this space. The U.S., we muddle it up. We're like, oh, SIDS and like not a big one. You know, it becomes like more complicated sometimes with all of those concerns. But there is something you can even, just small even, like to kind of, you know, even if it's like something, it doesn't even have to be fluffy. You know, it can be something that's almost like a chew toy or something, you know, but just right?
Anything that's consistent, right? That is always there, so they can hold on to it in a time of insecurity, right?
Yes.
It's of their choice, in that if it's their own ownership.
Also, one other thing from what you're saying that I hear is being perfect. So what does it mean to have a perfect sleep? Like we talked about in our previous episode about food, where the amount of food, the time for food, and all of that is very personal from one kid to the next. And depending on the culture, I know in French culture we're very also strict, just like we're strict on food, we're very like animate about sleep. You know, they need to go to bed at that time, at that age, and they need to sleep 12 hours, and they need this and they need that. But if that's so strict, or is it something more fluid per kid? Like what's a
great question. What
is the range that is okay physiologically, so that parents can be like, okay, I don't have to be into a box.
So one of the things that I talk about a lot is first wind, second wind. Okay. So first wind is when your body physiologically is to fall asleep. Now I'm going to assume that we're all trying to follow circadian rhythm, right? So most of the people, I'll be honest with you, I had this one family that the parents were like, listen, our kid goes to bed at 3 a.m. and we all wake up at noon. Like, basically, they're like, this is the way our life is. And I'm like, what am I going to tell you? Like, you know, I mean, it's kind of messed up, and you're not going to have fun when the kids start school, because that's just going to be painful, but you do you know? Most people, though, the bedtime is optimal up until the age of 5. The bedtime is 6:30, 7:30. Now, based on what we were just saying, food, right? Dinner should be like 4:30 or so, 4:30, 5 o'clock, right? So if bedtime, if food is at 6:30, like, you're kind of like treading on that line, because what ends up happening is that if you pass that 6:30, 7:30, right, and now they're not going to bed to 8:30, 9, especially less than the age of 5, the adrenaline kicks in.
Yeah.
And you'll see it. We see it. Like, my bedtime as an adult is really like 9:30, 10:30, right? But if I try to like start going to sleep at like, you know, 11 o'clock, you know, my eyes are way open. Like, I'm having a hard time falling asleep. Whereas 9:30, I can barely like keep my head up. Now, does it, you know, I'll be frank, like, with no kids in the house, it's the first time I've been able to really, like, my husband and I like say, like, this is the empty nest And I did not realize that I get sleepy at 9:30. Like my son was getting home sometimes at 9:30. So we didn't even have that luxury. So the empty nest secret is that you really, like, you're at 9:30, you're like, are you sleepy? I'm sleepy. Let's go to bed.
Yes.
That is the empty nest secret. I'm going to tell you, nobody tells you this. And I'm like, this is magical. Like 9:30, I get to go to bed. So that's just an aside. But, you know, you can feel that, like almost like someone took a shot of adrenaline and put it right in your arm. That's what happens to your kids. And when the thing that's pretty horrible about that is that when you get that shot of adrenaline, when you hit second wind, you never really go into REM that well. So even if you go to sleep at 11 and you get your full 8 hours, they were not good 8 hours because you didn't really go into REM as well.
Okay.
So that's where the evolution, and then after 5, it can be 7:30, 8:30. You know, like it shifts a little bit, right? But it's that kind of thing where if you find that it's taking an hour and a half to go to bed, there's 15 books being read. Like you guys are like, you are definitely in second wind. Like you are no longer in first wind. That is all second wind behavior.
So in that case, if you're caught into that moment where the kids take forever to go to sleep, you would say like move everything an hour to 2 hours earlier.
Move it all up. Move it all up.
That's a good tip, because I think naturally you would tend to push it back, saying, "Oh, they're not tired yet. I'm just going to wait longer."
That's classic kind of like. I mean, it makes sense. I'm not saying that like, you know, that we didn't do it, but it just physiologically, you're just like shooting your other foot. You shot your first foot. You just shot your other foot. So you really are gonna have a hard time. And I know that it's hard. Like, you know, I've worked with people. This is why I really enjoy the kind of like health coaching space of it, because it isn't a very, it's the decision to do this and to kind of shift takes time. It takes a lot of moving parts. Okay.
Yes. We're back. Sorry.
Sorry. So what I was saying is that if you have a situation, for example, that there's an earlier parent, right? So like comes home with the kids and like say like at 4:30 they get like their meal, right? But then at 7 o'clock, that's when, you know, dad comes home, you know, the other partner comes home. I always tell them, and sometimes if I have the dad there or if I have the other partner there, I will say, when you walk in the house, you cannot walk in like, hey, everybody, it's so fun.
Yeah, no, not fair for the other one.
That is not your role. That your job is to come in quietly. Hi, everyone, we're getting ready for bed now, right? Okay, let's hang out. We can hang out for like 10, 15 minutes and, you know, relax with each other, and then you go to bed, right? Because you can be that sunlight, you know, like that kind of comes up again. And they're like, oh, now we go to second wind. You know, now we're back in. And I think that's the part that I think is tricky, is trying to manage everybody's schedules. But it works. It really does help to make sure that those couple hours are clean.
Yeah. At least that's the goal. But it's good to know where the goal is so that you can work towards getting there, right? Little
the
by
routine
little.
can
entirely.
Yeah.
Entirely.
So when is it then so much out of range that people need to go and consult a pediatrician like you? Like what would be the alarming factor that you would see? Or that's beyond just a routine thing, or it's something that needs to be looked into?
Things that I think that it is hard because a lot of times kids are very sick or sick often. So if they're kind of getting sick all the time, partially and the sleep is really out of control, then you have to kind of figure out how to help with the illness. If they're really hungry, if they are actually hungry, you know, they go through growth spurts, dietary changes so that during the daytime you're getting more fat and protein, right? And they're not just doing kind of carbs all day, right? Because at night they're going to have a hard time feeling full. If they're having sleep apnea, where you actually like hear them snoring and they're like kind of choking themselves up before they go to bed, that becomes a problem, right? Because when they kind of do that, you know, they're disrupting their sleep, but there might be a medical reason, whether that their tonsils need to come out, you know, their adenoids, snoring, like allergies, things, that kind of, you know, that is all going to be relevant in terms of affecting their sleep. So, you know, I think it's both the quantity, the quality, and like the kind of like sleep hygiene that all has to be considered when you talk about the topic of sleep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other tips, Fanny, that you'd like to share since you had?
For me, the best thing that worked with my second one was the routine that we put in place, like always the same thing over and over to like make him understand it's gonna be the time, or we settle down like quiet, calm. Your sister is not allowed on the room because she's too exciting. So yeah, we put his sleep sack, we do a story, we take the doo-doo, and we speak very quiet, and for him to understand that we turn one light off. That what worked the best. And we did the same book, I think, for maybe 2 months. The same story, very short story, but I read that to repeat the same thing over and over will make them understand that, I mean, it's a routine. So we don't even change the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that worked. So yeah, we did that, and gradually we stay a little bit longer with him, but not in our arm, in his bed, but we let our hand first on him, then just be aside of the bed, then, you know, at the door, and then close the door.
Right?
Yeah, but we did it gradually, and I think he needed that to fall asleep by himself. Like, he knows that we were in a room, and that's comforted him. He was not able to do it on his own, like, took some time. So that was my advice: routine, and give it some time, like gradually, out of your arm, in the bed, but touch him and or your baby, and then beside the bed, and then a little bit further, and they're gonna learn. But every baby is different, so it can be long or not, but it works. Now he's sleeping.
Did he cry a lot?
Yeah.
Right?
At the beginning, he cried a lot. Could take like more than 40 minutes.
And would you just stand there while he was crying, or how would you go up and
at the beginning, we start to not be there and come back, let him like few minutes, come back, reassure him without taking him in
without picking him up. That's a big deal. Right?
We did not take him, but we reassure him that we are here, he's safe, he can do it. The same as we did with our daughter, that works wonder, but it didn't work for him for some reason. So we changed. We tried another thing. We tried the routine more precisely for him, and then we tried still he has to fall asleep by himself, but we were more with him. Like we needed to stay in the room. Like for him, it was like the things to go.
So would you leave before he fell asleep or after he fell asleep?
At the beginning, after he fell asleep, and gradually, during or after. But it took like more than 2 months.
I mean, I think that was brilliant. I think that you read the room. You kind of like took a look and you said, you know, I can't keep. He's just it doesn't work the same at all. You know, some kids need like a hard stop. Like your daughter or something, like she was like, leave the room. I can't even see you. Let me just do it myself. You know? Right? Like you're just messing me up, but you're kind of confusing me. And for him, he was like, I need to know that I can almost like smell you, and then I'll fall asleep. What I think that you did, which I don't know if you realize this, one of the things that they say is that, say you lift him up and then he falls asleep in your arms, right? And then you put him back in. A lot of people do that, right? The problem is that it's like falling asleep in your bed and then waking up in the bathtub. Right? Because if they fall asleep in your arms, right, the last thing they remember was that they were in your arms. So if they wake up and they're not in your arms, they're like, how the hell did I get here? Like, what happened?
They're gonna be lost in the middle of the night, so they were not able to go back to sleep again. So that was the point.
Reorient.
Yeah, that was the point.
That was the point, right? So the whole thing that, you know, this idea of like touching him, right? So there's a Dr. Esteville who does a lot of Spanish in Spanish, but it's the idea of just like touching, patting,
Yeah.
you know, and then very, and then just gradually kind of bring up. But I would love, you know, I think that what I really enjoy is, you know, take what you learn from the way that they fell asleep and see if it does reflect on their personality. You know, he might be that kid when you go to drop him off at school or at daycare. You know, he may need you to be a little longer with him, right? Just a little longer. Whereas your daughter might be like, go, like, yeah. Why are you here? I remember my first kid, you know, they were very like, you know, stay here. Okay, no, tomorrow. They were very deliberate, but they were also like, I want you to be here, you know? And I remember my second one, I just sat there. I remember it was the first day of school. I dropped him off. He sat down. I sat down next to him. He started drawing. And then he looked up at me and he said, why are you here? And I was like, I don't know. That's how I did it with your sibling. Like, what do you mean? And he's like he was like, before anyone sees you, like, why are you still here with me? And he's still like that. He's still like, you know, like, bye. And we dropped him off at college and he just like turned and like walked away, you know? And I was like, my God, it's the same freaking kid, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, that is, you know, they're not that different. It's all of the basic foundation is already there. The wiring, a lot of the wiring is already there, you know? And, you know, it's a good moment to pause. I always feel like in my mind, I always say the first 5 years are really illustrative, and you really need to spend the time to really, you know, take notes, you know, really like kind of hold on to the little lessons that you learn in those first 5 years, because it's like a looking glass. Like you get to really see what's inside of their mechanics. And then, you know, Piaget goes through this whole thing of like the next years when they go into school, you know, they go into the studious phase where the rules of the school are really on their mind, right? The rules of like society, you know, that's what they're really obsessed with. And then they go back to adolescence where they have to now untangle and weave, right? Who am I? You know, where does society want me to be? Where do I not want to be? Like, those are things that we still kind of deal with even into like, you know, post-adolescence, you know, young adulthood, you know, and understanding that like there are certain rules that society has, but at the same time, we may not fit that. You know, we may not fit that. And can we still exist? Can we still be happy? And what will we give up and what things will we keep? And again, gets really kind of complicated, but everything starts in the beginning. You know, so you do them a service to kind of understand that, you know, to honor that.
So then it means it's a worse pain and suffering, because as you said, it's hard to hear them, you know, and look at them struggle, and it's
Totally
very tempting to just be like, okay, I'm gonna you know, try to help you or soothe you, or but it is good to hear that it's forming for them and for you as a parent. I think a lot of people need to hear that to make them feel like by doing nothing, they're actually doing something.
Yeah.
You're doing probably the hardest work, because one of the things I think, again, just trying to like pull off of the whole helicopter parenting phase, you know, we are going into like performative parenting where people are just doing things to show off on Facebook, basically. So that's a whole other situation going on right now. But with helicopter parenting, you know, the hardest thing is that it's like cutting your kid's legs off and being like, walk.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. And you're absolutely right. The training is not just for them, it's for you. It's really hard, but you have to realize that sometimes there's a great book called Blessing of a Skin Knee. And it's basically the idea that like, you have to learn how to like allow your kids to kind of ride the ups and downs of life. And you have to be able to watch that and know, like you said, remind yourself, this is important. They needed to understand this. They needed to feel this.
And that would remove a lot of the guilt of sometimes feeling, oh, I'm useless because I'm not helping, but or maybe I'm, you know, causing more harm. But like knowing that it's actually beneficial in the long term might be a moment where you're like, okay, let's breathe and give me give myself some grace.
Absolutely. And I think that that idea of like, I always tell you, right, guilt and fear are like poison, right? Anytime that I can pull off like guilt and fear, because you're afraid. I'm afraid that my kid's going to suffer, but be more afraid that your kid won't learn how to suffer. Because honestly, life doesn't get easier. It actually gets a lot harder.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Right? And it's you can't put your kids out there without those self-soothing techniques, right? Maybe there is like an emotional dodo.
Yeah.
Maybe what you're creating, right, which is what you were saying. I mean, you made it very clear. You're like, I'm kind of trying to create like this like hypnotic space where like just even the thought of the dodo, right, makes me feel like, okay, like I know where I am, right? But I love the little like pieces of like the French culture that says, well, and you know, you chose for your kids, but you know, it's that kind of thing that the intention, right, is that they're going to take ownership of it. It's your dodo. It's not my dodo. It's not someone else's dodo. It's your dodo, you know? And to say that you have skills, it's not going to just be me. I'm not going to be the one, you know? And that's the part that I think is the sooner you can kind of like give the reins as much as you can to your kids, little pieces of power, right? Little pieces of ownership is, and responsibility, honestly, right? So that they kind of know both. It is a great habit to have.
Yeah.
Right? It's a good habit to have with your kids because they have to, you all have to get in that motion. You know, you all have to get into that rhythm. And I'm not telling you like, let them be rude, right? Let them be obnoxious. Okay. So I'm not telling you is that like, you know, when you give them all of this, that they can be monsters, right?
Yeah.
Right. So let's just be clear. They still have to have boundaries. They still have to have some rules, but to give them the thrill of ownership over some parts of, they say like toddlers, as much as you can, let them choose their own clothing, right? And having that ownership really makes a difference.
Yeah,
because
of like control, and
yes. Yeah. I mean, I know growing up Asian American, that was not given to me. I don't think it is. I don't think even now it's given to me. Like it's a very kind of like not. It's just not part of the culture, you know. But it's really difficult because living in American culture, I have to be able to face things on my own, and I had to kind of almost demand it at a late age when I feel like, you know, that was not good. that wasn't really thinking the long game, you know. You have to, I mean, I'm almost 50, like this is ridiculous, you know, that I'm still demanding, you know, ownership of things, you know.
Yes.
And that's, it just doesn't work in the long game.
Well, I think we're about done on time. So thank you for taking the time to share with us about sleep today. We hope this session has helped and will help a lot of parents into their sleeping journey with their baby and their kids. Definitely put some thought into our heads for sure. So on that, we'll say bye, and we hope to see you all soon in 2 weeks for another episode of Mom Talk with the French Accent. Bye.
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 Bye.